Welcome to a video from dslice.com. This is a look at the brand new Korg ARP 2600. This is a plug-in virtual version of the classic 2600, launched in 1971 by ARP Instruments. Was produced right into the early 80s actually, and there's a few different versions around, but it's a classic semi-modular synth, and I'll show you what I mean by that shortly. There are a few recreations of those out. Behringer have got one, and Korg themselves have got one, but this was created by Korg R&D, developed by Korg R&D in the US, and it's now part of the Korg Collection 5. You would have heard it on Michael Jackson's songs, Thriller, The Bassline, Madonna, Borderline, R2-D2 sound, Edgar Winter, and loads of synth users in the 70s use this classic synth. So it's a faithful reproduction of the 2600 with a few extra modules thrown in. Incidentally, if you want to hear an interview with Korg's R&D Dan Phillips about the 2600, I've got a separate video of that on our YouTube channel, just check that out. So in this video I'm going to give you a quick tour of the synth, make some patches up. I won't look at the presets too much. What I'll do is I'll make some of my own sounds, and I'll show you some of the sounds that I've created for it as well. I'll talk about a bit of the concept of the synth and some of the modules. You can do pretty much anything you can do with the 2600 you can do on here, so go on YouTube, find a look at some of the classic 2600, the original ones. You can find some videos on that, but I'll show you what you can do on here as well. And you've got some extra things like effects, which I'll quickly show you. So if anybody's familiar with the Korg Modwave or Wavestate, then this UI up here, especially at the top, is pretty familiar, as is the library section as well. So these are some of the patches. I've got 39 here, patches that I'll be including as a free download, and available now or pretty soon as the 2600 launches. And we'll have a look at some of those. So it's really easy on the management side. Plug in, use it with your DAW. I'm using it in standalone moment as well. You've got an optional audio input, which is what the 2600 had, so you can process, you can use it as a send or insert effect, or you can use it directly here with your USB or whatever microphones that are connected up to your system. I'll have a look at that later. So the idea of this synth is it's a semi-modular, which means it's not like, say, an Odyssey, which has got switches, patch switches in, but it's not a full modular system where everything has to be patched in. It's semi-modular, which means it's got some normalized controls. For example, here we've got the 3 oscillators, and here you can see I've got the mixer, the filter mixer, and this here shows me that VCO1 square wave is normalized to this slider. So if I play a note, you can hear that square wave because it's normalized. If I turn on this one, you'll hear the output of the noise generator, which means you can then override it and do interesting things with it. For example, the VCO1 also produces a sawtooth, so you could override that and use a sawtooth. That's great. VCO3, you can have a sawtooth, but you can be then clever with it and say, okay, I'm not using it as an input, I'm going to use it as a modulation for something else. So you could say, let's listen to VCO2, which has got pulse width on it, and we can do pulse width modulation, which is being modulated by the noise gen, because that's the normalized control. But instead I want to take the output of this vibrato, so let's go the square wave one. So you can hear that, or I could take the triangle wave one. So there you go. So that's the concept of the semi-modular, which means you can do all sorts of interesting effects to it. So the basic layout of the synth is you've got an audio input section and a ring modulator, 3 oscillators, a filter, 2 envelopes, amplifier, and then a mixer. And then you've got some extra things. We've got a motion sequencer with 2 channels, which I'll show you later. We've got an additional filter. We've got a noise generator. We've got a voltage processor, which means you can kind of combine controls. So you can maybe combine a mod wheel output with an LFO output to so you've got some control over it, or you can combine an LFO with an oscillator to do something else. We've got a sample hold section and another more complex envelope on there as well. We've also got some effects. So here there's an effects sound, but I've got 3 slots so you can choose from all these effects. So we've got guitar, amps, chorus, flanger. So let's just go with the modern chorus, and then I could go with a bit of compression on that, and I could add a tape echo, and then reverb. So there you go. So that's the kind of the layout. And then once you've got this, then yeah, you can just start doing sound design, and it's actually pretty easy once you get into it. This sort of color coded front panel here, these show you the sort of the generators, and then the processors, and then the controllers. You can change that and put it to the original layout, or you can go to the color layout, and you can choose your own cable colors as well. So we'll stick with the classic ones for now. So let's demonstrate it, creating a patch. Let's go for some kind of lead sound initially. So we've got, so there's our pulse width lead with no modulation going on it at the moment. Turn that down. There's our square. Let's add our a sawtooth. This one, oscillator 3, is already normalized to a sawtooth. But I want to tune this, and you can manually tune it just as you could on the original instrument with a slider. Or if you hold down Shift, you can do the coarse tuning. So I could tune it 2 octaves below. I'm going to do some fine tuning as well. Already sounded pretty good, just that combination of the 3 oscillators. Now I can put a bit of, we could, because you've got this multi-output, this example here is for the noise gen, this one here. Now I could decide I'm not using the noise gen in this patch, but I do want another sawtooth, even though I'm already using the pulse width of VCO2, I could bring the sawtooth in. Now, filter control, we've got an envelope, an ADSR envelope. Let's apply that to it. Now, we don't need to patch it because it's normalized, it's already there. So if I turn down the coarse filter, there we go, start to get, I'm going to change that to multi-trigger while I'm playing bass type ones. Okay, now what you could do with this filter, I can assign that to a control, or I can learn it. So I'm going to learn it. I'm using a Modwave, so I can use knob 1 to control that filter. So there we go, got that now. And I could say that the resonance, I actually want to use bit of routing, so resonance, I'm actually going to control it from the mod wheel and quite a lot of intensity. So that's using the mod wheel now. Or I could have, if you've got, so I've got a Minilogue which has got the resonance pot on there, I could just learn that one as well. So there we are, so we've got the envelope on there. Controlling the amplifier envelope, you can see this AR1, but you could use the filter one, the same one, the ADSR one, or we could use one of these auxiliary envelopes which has got a bit more control over it as well, but for now we'll leave it as it is. And then we could do some other interesting things. The output of the filter, we could actually put it into this drive control and then back into the circuit as well. So just using that one. that's driving it a bit. So here's the original, there's the one with the drive. That's okay. So that could be it, that could be our bass patch and ready to go, but we could apply some other things to it. We could have some LFO, or we could apply some sample hold, and I'll look at those shortly. Let's go back to an initialized patch. We'll go to a sawtooth lead. So for that I'm going to go sawtooth, 3 stacked sawtooths. There's our sawtooth. Now I can apply some modulation on that, so let's put the delayed modulation and let's apply that to this control here. So let's go back to single oscillator for now. So you hear what we've applied that modulation, and if we put the delay. Now if I combine all 3, we've only got modulation on oscillator 1. But we can combine it, but we can also apply that to the other oscillators. You can actually use the oscillators to modulate themselves as well. So let's say, for example, let's go to oscillator 3. So there's our pulse width, and I can actually modulate it by oscillator 3. So let's listen to oscillator 3. Let's slow it down into the more audio range, like that, and we take that sawtooth and we modulate the pulse width modulation. And if we take it down to the low frequency range, so there you can hear that sawtooth then. So you can actually use it interesting ways like that as well. Now I mentioned about the filters as well. We've got 4 different modes of the filters actually. We've got a low pass filter. We've got a second low pass filter. So this is from the later models. So the first version is from the early models, which is a 4-pole, and then this is modelled on the 4072 4-pole low pass, and then we've got a high pass filter and a band pass filter. So I like those. Those filters are really nice actually. We'll have a bit more with the filters in a minute. Now, some of these modules that we've got another filter which we'll look at later. We've got noise generation, and we've got sample hold, and then these voltage processors. These voltage processors can do interesting things like inversions and combining values. One thing I've tried which does work is you can do an inversion of the keyboard. So you can take the keyboard CV, feed it into the voltage processor, and take the inverse output back to the control on the synth. So now as I go up the keyboard, the voltage goes down. So I'm going up. If I combine that with one that's going normal, so you can see I've just inverted that. So this oscillator, the keyboard scaling goes down, and this one goes up as normal. That's the kind of thing you can do with it. I've got a few more examples of those. So the other thing we could do, we could use this sample and hold to control the filter. Let's have a quick look. One I've already set up for that. So you can see here, I'm using the 3 oscillators, and the filter cutoff is being controlled by the sample and hold output, which is also modifying the pulse width modulation of oscillator 2. So the noise generator is feeding the sample and hold, and then that's going out. You see we've also got some switches as well, so you can use it as a switch value, so you're switching between A and B, so you could switch something around oscillators or whatever with that as well. So that's a nice example. Use a sample and hold to control the filter. So here's an example of using the motion sequencer, which is down here. This sends those voltages out, so one track and another track there. You can quantize the pitch levels as well, but you can control pitch or you can control voltage to control other things. In this case, you heard the pitch from sequence 1 affecting oscillator 1 and oscillator 2, and the second output from this lane is affecting the pulse width of oscillator 2. The gate is controlling the triggering over here. So if I turn the sequence on, so that's oscillator 1. Oscillator 3 is being triggered by the gate, but there's no pitch or anything controlled, so you're just hearing that without the pitch. And then oscillator 2 is the pitch of lane 1 and the pulse width modulation based off that lane there, and we can control the gate time. So you put those together, so we've got that sequence, kind of almost like Tangerine Dreamy type sequence. And of course I've still got that filter control. But I could, let's try sending the sequence 2 output to the filter cutoff. So there you can hear I've got this. Turn that through. Or we could send it to something like resonance. In fact, looks like resonance. I've already set that up from the mod wheel. So using the mod wheel, I can control the resonance. So there's the sequencer. So it's got ring modulation, as you can hear. I'm using the sequencer to alter the frequency of the oscillators, so I can control a bit of, so it adds a bit of ring modulation. See, I've got that going through there. So here's an example of a lead. I called it whistle lead. So this one uses that LFO trick which I mentioned earlier to give you that delayed vibrato. I'm using the tape echo, and I've got a bit of noise going through as well just to give that whistle effect. Just keep it subtle on there. I've actually got a bit of envelope on the pitch control as well. I'm using this envelope here, this auxiliary envelope, to put the pitch control on oscillator 2 to give it that bit of a whistle effect. So something else I want to show is polyphony mode. So you've got in mono mode, you've got the mono mode with single or multi-trigger. So if you're in single mode, it doesn't re-trigger the envelope. So let me just show you. So the envelope only gets triggered once in single mode. In multi-mode, it's re-triggering the envelope. You've got full polyphony. Again, so there's full polyphony, and I've actually got some polyphonic sounds like pads, which I can show you shortly. The other thing though you've got is this duo mode. So this is on the 2600. So oscillator so what it does is it sends a separate CV voltage, control voltage, for the higher note. So I'm playing 2 notes at a time here, but it's a multi, I think. So I'm playing 2 notes there, a G and a D, and you can only hear the G because I haven't done anything with this patch part here. But if I patch this into control oscillator 1, there you hear I'm still holding down the G, but I'm also going up to the notes, so it's playing the other notes because it's controlled by the upper. But the lower note is still there, so if I bring in oscillator 2, so now you can hear as I hold the note I get the G, and then as I press the other notes the G is still there, but the other higher notes are being played. So you can get some interesting effects from that, especially if you do some modulation. So for example on this, what I've done here is I've got a lead sound. I've took this duo control voltage, put it into the voltage processor and put a lag on it, so there's a bit of a delay, and applied that to oscillator 2. So I've got portamento, but only on oscillator 2. So it gives that an interesting effect. But I took that idea and I've used this audio in here. So I've same patch, but I took the output of the filter into the audio in, turned the gain up, and took the output of the gain and fed it back in over here. So now you've got that kind of effect. Here's an example with sequencer. This is Blade Runner, the end part of the sequence, the 4-note sequencer that I put in using the sequence on there. Recognise that bit? That is the Don't Go, Yazoo Don't Go brass sound that I've recreated here. So just using the 3 sawtooths to get that kind of effect. I've got quite a few leads in this collection which you can have a play with. Some are like this one, which has got a saw lead. Because you can hear that I'm delaying that LFO coming in using that delayed vibrato. But I also got some bass sounds. So this, for example, this bass sound here uses the mod wheel to control the decay time on the envelope. I think it's really good for bass sounds, as used by Michael Jackson and many others. Then we've got this kind of a few lead sounds that are created using the tape effects. Sounds a bit Pink Floydy, but they didn't use one of these, but I do like that sound. Something I was playing about with as well to show you the modifier. So this one, I'm taking the mod wheel output, combining that with the auxiliary LFO triangle wave and feeding that back into oscillators 1's control. So when I do the, you can hear that it doesn't sound brilliant. Let's speed the LFO a bit. But of course I could take the aftertouch and patch that over as well and use aftertouch, or I could even use velocity. So low velocity, high velocity. But it just shows you the kind of thing you can even use pitch bend. A couple of things just to finish off some of the sounds I've created. Bit Gary Newman, that was done on Moog, Polymoog, but I've created that kind of sound on here, and that's just using the vibrato, LFO, and a bit of phase. If you turn the phasing off as well, you can think of it in cars as well. Just applying those techniques of sawtooth and some modulation. I mentioned polyphony, and here's some pads you can use. You can control through the 8, so you can have maximum of 8, but you can control that through there. So I could control it. So I could control down the envelope control and use the mod wheel. And the final one of these patches I wanted to show you is one that I've been playing out with that really invokes a sort of the Blade Runner Vangelis type sound. So this is a brass patch that I've set up with a nice slow envelope, some nice effects on there, a bit cathedral reverb, and I've patched through Poly Aftertouch to control the filter to give it an extra bit as well. So I'm going to switch over to using the key stage to play this with the Poly Aftertouch, and I'll give you a bit of demo. So that was using the key stage to get the Poly Aftertouch, and it's a pretty simple patch really. You've got sawtooths, 3 sawtooths going through there with some detuning on them, a nice slow attack time on that, slow envelope on there, and over on the reverb page put cathedral reverb. Now we've got some tape echo and that kind of thing on it, just to give it that atmospheric sound, but a really almost CS80 like sound. A real CS80 type sound, especially when you combine with all the reverbs and everything else. Right, so now we're going to take a look at using this as a effects processor now. I'm going to do it in standalone mode, but you can do this as a plug-in, send, or an insert effect. So now we'll try some audio input. This is one of the presets, but we'll create from scratch in a bit. So I've got an Uno drum hooked up here, and if I there you can hear the Uno drum coming through with that stereo filter on there. But then we've got other things like the low pass filter, a bit of saturation on there. A bypass, a band pass, or a high pass. So there it is through a high pass. And we've even got things like envelope follower. So if I just go to an initial patch here, you can see that the output of the preamp is going into the VCF there, and then we can control the VCF in many different ways. So we could use an LFO, turn down the filter, cut the filter up. We can sync that with the drums if we wanted to. My drum machine is standalone, so it's not synced up at the moment, but you could do that. And then of course you can run it all through the effects. You get the chorus, and we have a phaser, some tape echo, and some hall reverb. You could run it through the sequencer, so you could create a sequencer pattern and create some rhythmic effects through that as well. So, and it's not just the drums, you could run anything there. So I could send something else through there. So that's a Behringer's string ensemble which I'm playing. How about a bit of organ? So there's a lot you can do with it. All this routine, the multi-mode filter and everything else you can include in that as well. So there's a lot you can do with that. I'm going to spend a bit more time with that. And to finish off, we're going to look at this multi-mode, multi-sweep filter. So this is an additional filter to the primary filter. It is normalized to take the filter output, so you can have this filter running and then another filter. But I'll leave this filter open to show you. So there's the filter wide open. If I bring this level up, and then we take the output of the filter and replace the current filter. So now we're going from there, through there, and back out. So you can hear that filter. And we've got three modes on this. We've got a bandpass, low pass, and high pass, and you can sweep through them. So here's one that's using the existing filter. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn this audio down for a second. Just going to take the output of the sweeper filter, and so we can't hear anything at the moment because we've not got any audio in, but what we can take here is the output of the filter, and what I'm going to do on that is I'm going to change that to completely open, and then we can start putting it through here. So that now is completely, that audio is now going through this filter. I'm going to put it to low pass mode. And you can see we've got the sequence, let's take that out as well. So sequence 1 levels are controlling that filter. And sequence 2 is controlling the pulse width and some other stuff. But what we can do is put that back to there now. So I'm now controlling the sequence from this lane, or the filter from this lane. So now you can hear that filter kicking in. And we could say, let's have the... So we now got that sweep on it there. And we can do other things, so we can, let's control the resonance. So we can do some other stuff. We can let's control the resonance from a free running LFO. Another thing we could do is we can control the mode, so it's running in low pass at the moment, but we can take that as well. So we can take a square wave, So there you go. So now we've got the filter mode being changed by that LFO, resonance by that one, and the step sequencer changing the cutoff. So there you go. We've got quite a few reaching options on this little filter, and we're not even touching this filter, which we can control via an envelope. So we've got a bandpass filter feeding that filter, so there's a lot of options you can do with it. So that was my first look at the new 2600, the ARP 2600 from the Korg Collection. I have got a sound set that's available, so this will be up shortly when the video gets released. This 37, and there may be some more by the time I publish this video. Different sounds that some I've demonstrated from here that all use that, some poly, some monos, some interesting sounds. It's a real fun synth to play with. I really enjoy using it, especially hooked up to a poly aftertouch controller. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. You can see more on digitalifestyle.com.